Okay, hello again, everybody. We're back for another review. I'm here with Alyssa again.
Hi.
Yeah, so it's been a little bit since we've had a review together.
I know. I've missed you.
I'm definitely looking forward to doing another review with you. I was just thinking of like what would be a good movie for us to talk about, and I thought Promising Young Woman would be a good movie to talk about.
Yes. Yes.
There's a lot to talk about with this movie, I think.
I loved it, by the way.
Yeah, yeah, it's good. It's really good. And yeah, there's some interesting. Just to give you a preview, I heard this story, and actually Carey Mulligan sort of basically said it was true that there was a screen. They did basically a test screening, but it was like, it was like probably a small thing because it was like during COVID,
Hmm.
and there was like some people, and then some critics, and then some people at the studio, and they said that there was something that happened at the end of this movie, and then people got into a fight in the theater over the ending.
I could see that. Can I mention one thing?
Yeah. Go ahead.
This was extremely triggering for me. I love the movie, by the way, like I said. But I've had similar experiences, not the same experiences, similar, and watching it really brought those to the forefront of my mind. So I just have to give that out to people. If you had similar experiences with sexual harassment, assault, etc., maybe avoid this because it could be triggering. Um, I loved it, but again, it brought back a lot of memories I didn't want to feel again. So just have that out there.
Yeah. This movie does not hold back in the way that it deals with sexual assault and
Yeah.
sort of stuff like that, and the culture surrounding how we deal with and treat people that have had that experience. So it's definitely a kind of movie that gets some strong reactions.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So let's just so what we're gonna do is we'll kind of talk about sort of half of the film where there's not, too big of a
Yeah.
spoilers to go through. And then we're gonna talk about like basically the ending and the second half of the film and a spoiler, and we'll just let you know, hey, if you don't
Yeah.
want to know, just watch the movie, come back and see the second half. Cool. All right. So yeah, let's just talk a little bit about the plot. So this film, it opens up. They're like these three guys at a club, and they're talking, and it's
They have
like
Adam
Adrian.
Brody, who is
Yeah,
always the nice guy.
yeah. It's yeah, it's Adam Brody and like these two other guys, and right off the bat, like the guys are like, okay, so they set this up where basically the two guys are pretty douchey, but they make Adam
Yeah.
Brody out to be like the good guy, right? Because like the two other guys are like talking about like something to do with like some woman at work or something, and they're kind of putting her down in a
And he's
weird
not really
way.
having anything to do with it. He was just kind of standing there.
Yeah, and then but then they notice Cassandra, who's like the protagonist of this movie, and she looks and she's like super drunk basically, like
Yeah. She's
you
acting
just,
like it. She's slumping over. You can
yeah.
see up her skirt. And they're like, hey, I can't remember his name in the film, but Adam Brody, they're like, hey, go talk to her. She's really hot.
Yeah, yeah, they're just like, oh yeah, basically sort of, it's like an easy score
Yeah.
kind of deal. Yeah, and she's like, by the way, she's also by herself. Cassandra's
Hmm.
totally by herself, and she's like totally, yeah, she's like wasted, basically is how she looks. So then, yeah, Adam Brody goes over there. It's like, hey, are you okay? And she's like, oh, blah blah blah, I lost my phone. And he's like, okay, how are you gonna get home? Oh, I'm just gonna call a cab. And it's like, can't really call a cab if you don't have a phone. And then he offers to take her home. Okay, so then they're in the cab and they're kind of talking. And she looks really drunk. She's like hanging her head out the window. And then he's like, oh, why don't we just go to my apartment? And she's like, okay. And so then he's like, yeah. And this was kind of funny too, because he's like, because they're basically an Uber, right? And he's
Hmm.
like, oh, go to this other address instead. He's like, oh, you have to put it in the app. He's like, oh, okay. So yeah, it's all kind of interesting and funny because like again we're like, okay, where is this kind of going, right? Like whose story is this? And so then he takes her home and he's like, oh, well, let's have a drink, blah blah blah. And then he kind of just starts kind of taking advantage of her. He's like kissing her and stuff and
Mm-hmm.
like taking her on the bed. And she's just like, what are you doing? Hey, what are you doing? And she kind of stops him.
Which he doesn't hear her at first. And then she sits up and she's like, what are you doing? And he looks and he's like, what? You're not drunk?
Yeah, exactly. You're not drunk. And then that's basically, then it kind of cuts from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So what was your whole feeling about this opening scene? What kind of things did it take you through, basically?
Okay, so I had seen the leak that came out months ago, and I was hoping it wasn't actually true, and it was. So that kind of dampened my experience a little bit. So I kind of knew what was going to happen. So I can't like be like, oh, I'm so surprised because I did see the leak. So yeah, I'm not a good judge of that right now.
Yeah. So I thought this was really basically the setup. And then in the next scene, we see that she has a notebook
Mm-hmm.
where she has like a list of names, but also she kind of is keeping count. And so she's basically keeping count of like these types of encounters where she sort of, I guess there's a turnabout is a way to put it, with these people who think they're going to get an easy sexual encounter. And I mean,
so many.
Right? I mean, what was it, like 100? Close to 100?
It was like 5 pages worth of just marks, and then she's on her 6th page, just like marking.
Yeah. So yeah, from the jump, it's like and what I really like about this movie too, is like the casting is really good.
Mm-hmm.
She did a lot of really good casting, like choosing, like you said, Adam Brody, like the good guy. You know, wasn't he he was in the OC, right?
Yeah, he was in the OC, Seth.
Yeah, the OC, like this like the nerdy pretty boy who's like very nice, unassuming, right? It's all these unassuming, and we'll see another great casting choice of like one of these guys, but all of them is just like these unassuming people, you know. It's like, oh well, that person couldn't possibly do X.
Yeah, all their previous roles, everyone she cast were like super nice guys, super nerdy. You never would have thought they would be in the villain role, and they are.
Yeah, because it makes it more, I think it kind of helps it hit the sort of thematic thing with this story, which is like, again, it's all coming back to the stuff about, you know, dealing with like the sexual assault and stuff like that. Because, you know, basically it's like presenting, hey, you look at the Adam Brody person or whatever, and it's be like, oh, well, this person could never do that. And it's like, it happens. Totally happens. Yeah. Yeah. So then, you know, continuing on, so we see Cassandra, and it's like the next day, and she's like walking home, and she's like being catcalled by some
construction workers. Yeah.
And she kind of gives them the death stare.
Which she does have a defining feature about her that they don't capture, which probably will save for the spoiler part.
Yeah. And so then we see that she lives at home with her parents, and she works as a barista.
Which her parents are Clancy Brown and Jennifer Coolidge, which is kind of really awesome to see.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Again, like the casting is like perfect in this film. Like every character is like really well cast. They are, you know, just chose, like, got all the best people, you know, I could think of, especially for like what she's trying to go for. But yeah, like the parents is like perfect casting, really fun. And then we see her at work, and then so this guy Ryan Cooper, who's played by Bo Burnham, he's a comedian, right?
I love Bo Burnham. Yeah, his last special, he hasn't made one in about 4 years. Make Happy, one of my favorites.
Cool. Yeah. So we see him. He comes into her job. He recognizes her from school.
Yeah.
And he kind of says something and kind of implies that she's kind of underachieving. And then we get some kind of jokey, rom-com-y, meet cute stuff where, you know, she's kind of like, whatever. He's like, oh, I'm sorry, you can spit in my coffee. And she literally spits in his coffee.
Yeah, and then he drinks it.
He drinks it. And And he's like, oh, can you like give me your number? And she's like, okay. She gives him a number. And so then the next scene. Now this I thought I really liked this next scene. So she's on a date, like one of these like fake, you know, in dates where she like gets a guy who's like trying to, you know, basically get an easy score.
Super drunk and all that, yeah.
Yeah, and it's the guy from Superbad. Like it's McLovin from
McLovin! It's McLovin!
It's
Mintz-Plasse.
It's McLovin from Superbad.
Yeah.
I thought that was perfect. And he's like, he's totally like crazy cokehead. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I love too is he goes on this weird, like really weird, like condescending kind of male diatribe, like, oh, you know, like, why do you wear makeup? Blah blah blah.
He's like, females look better without makeup.
Like, oh my god. Like, I can see how someone who's drunk or high would say something like that and think that it's like a positive thing, but yeah, that.
Which I mean, if he was sober and he's like, if females look better without makeup, I'd be like, yeah, femininity, but like he's totally out of his mind on coke and alcohol, so.
Yeah, he's like and then there's like a funny thing too where he like tries to get her to do the coke or whatever.
She's like, no, and he sticks his finger in her mouth and like rubs it on her gums. I'm like, no.
This scene was so good. This scene was ridiculous. Yeah. But then she like turns on him, right?
Yeah.
She's like, I need to go home. And he's like, oh my God, you're not drunk? and then she's just like, you know, like, why are you trying to take advantage of me? He's like, me? I'm a nice guy. We have a connection. And then she's like, oh, really? Like, what do I do for a living? How old am I?
Yeah.
What are my hobbies? Okay, what's my name? And he obviously has no idea.
No.
Yeah. And so then, you know, basically she's like, don't do this again. You know, she's almost like, you know, one of these like characters that want revenge after, you know, then they become I'm trying to, like a vigilante. She's just like getting vigilante justice big time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love this scene. Like, what did you think? Like, was this something that really kind of stood out to you?
It was. I was kind of grossed out by the fact that he just stuck his finger in her mouth. I'm like, it's COVID. Why are you sticking your finger in someone else's mouth? Which, obviously, in the movie it's not, but just in my head, it was like, okay. But, yeah, it was something that, you know, it resonated with me. With guys just feeling like they can kind of, with a girl that's not fully aware she's maybe innocent, just kind of like taking their way with her.
Yeah, totally. And like I was saying before, such a good setup because you look at this guy and you think, right? Like we look at him and we think, okay, this is just like
the most, it's McLovin, so
you don't think of this person as like a threatening kind of person, but like, you know, like easily, like those types of people do these types of things too. I feel like that's totally what the movie's trying to get across. And then later in the scene, basically, she says to him, you know, every week I go to a club, I act like I'm drunk, and then some nice guy, like you, tries to come over and sees I'm okay, and then basically tries to take advantage of me. Yeah. Right? And she's just like, don't do it again, or else. And then she's gone. And then the next, a couple later on, we see Ryan comes into her work again, and you know, it's basically this whole thing. Like he gave her a fake number, and he was like, "Oh, I ended up calling like a construction worker or something."
Yeah, she's like rattled off a random number from her mind, and he called it.
Yeah. And then so basically they agree to go on a date. Mm-hmm. And so then they go on the date, and then they're kind of talking about, because they both, I think this is the scene where we learn more about the fact that they both went to med school together, and they both kind of knew all these people in the same kind of circle pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
and that he kind of still hangs out with some of those people. And we know that something kind of happened in her past. I don't think at this point we totally know exactly what it is, but we do know there was this girl, Nina, that she knew that something happened to her, and that's motivating her to do what she's doing now.
Yeah.
And we're kind of picking up a little bit of the pieces of that. And then, so then they have this kind of, like, they get to the end of the date, and then they get to Ryan's house.
Yeah. And he's like, I didn't expect we'd get to my apartment. Do you want to come up? And she's like, no. And she just calls a cab.
Yeah. It's an interesting interaction that they have. And they kind of go their separate ways. And then it kind of feels like she's kind of mad at herself. Is how it kind of came off to me. Like,
Yeah.
she, because again, she's like put up this whole defense, right?
And she got let down with him, and then he leads her to his apartment. She didn't expect it. And then she's like, oh, he's just like, which he didn't force her to come up with him or anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But she's kind of like, oh, he just led me to his apartment.
Yeah. So I guess at this point, so how'd you feel about their relationship? Like, what were your thoughts?
I'm a big fan of Bo Burnham, so I was like, okay, perfect choice for like a sweet, like, love interest. And then when that happened, I'm like, he handled it very well, because he said, this is my apartment. And then when she was like, I don't feel comfortable, he's like, okay, you can call a cab. He didn't force her to go up or anything like that. So I felt like he was a really good guy. He respected her boundaries. And obviously she had let her guard down, because she's usually very on top of this. But she didn't, act out against him or anything. She knew, obviously, that he wasn't like the other guys that she came across, because she didn't try anything on him. So she obviously knows that he's a good guy. Just, she wasn't expecting that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a very interesting sort of scene, because again, it was like she's put up this really strong defense almost against like the whole world, because she's like sort of singularly focused, and this is again something we're gonna kind of see more of. She's constantly trying to get revenge. Like, that's all she wants. And the only thing she's kind of doing in the meantime is kind of finding these guys who like are like, into like finding women that are, in these vulnerable positions, and then kind of smashing them. But that's like all she does. She doesn't have any other kind of real romantic relationship. She's kind of put a shield up. And, again, we get these other scenes with their parents, and you can tell the parents are kind of like I think before their date, like it was like her birthday, and they gave her a
gift,
which was some luggage. It's like something to carry your luggage with.
Some pink luggage.
And then, the next day she's like, yeah, I think I got the idea pretty well. You want me to leave?
Yeah.
So, yeah, she's kind of been putting up this front, but like with him, it's kind of fading, but it's not really. She's still defensive. So, yeah, I found that interesting that, because like that's one of the big kind of questions I think that this movie's trying to like, the narrative's trying to like make us think like, is it going to actually work out, right?
Yeah. Which one thing I love about this movie is the whole movie is like, the soundtrack is very poppy. It is very bright and colorful. It's a very happy soundtrack for a movie that's not super happy.
Yeah.
But it makes you think that it's different, which I think is really in theme with the movie. It gives you a different impression than what it actually is.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's really interesting. Yeah, it's like, because it's like this movie has to deal with like some very kind of heavy stuff. But yeah, it does it in a very kind of poppy,
colorful way.
Yeah, totally. So then in the next scene we see Cassie. She has a meeting. She basically finds this person who used to go to her school, Madison, on like basically it looks like Facebook, but it's like super generic or whatever. And so and then we see Madison, who's played by Alison Brie, and they have a lunch together. And so, but Cassie, like, she does this thing where she basically it's the Madison character is someone who likes to get drunk or whatever. Pretty much.
And she switches her drink. She like pours ginger ale in her glass, and she pours the white wine in Madison's glass, and Madison just drinks glass after glass, and Cassie's just drinking ginger ale.
Yeah, so she gets her drunk at lunch like really quick. And so then Cassie kind of drops his bomb on her, confronts her about, why she dropped out of school. And it has to do with basically there's some event that happened where her friend Nina, got basically sexually assaulted at this med school by a group of guys. Or at least it was like a guy, and then there was a bunch of other guys who saw it.
Yeah, there's one guy in particular that she's really focusing in on.
Yeah, this guy Al Monroe or something like that. I think was his name.
That's his name. Yeah.
Yeah, and she's trying to get to him. She's just trying to find a way to get to him. Basically, that's her goal. Get revenge on him for what he did to Nina, and find whatever way she can. And so in this scene, like Madison says, oh well, it was just hearsay, blah blah blah, this and that, and like don't get blackout drunk all the time. So basically, she's like blaming the victim.
Yeah.
Another thing that we see come up right in this. There's a lot of that. And then she has this great line, Cassie, before she like leaves. It's like, oh, it's great seeing you. You haven't changed at all. and then so she had a plan here, right? She sets up this thing. I'm a little unsure exactly what happened, but like basically there's this guy that she doesn't know who has like a hotel key, and she makes it seem like that Madison and the guy like spent the night together, and she gets so drunk she doesn't remember what happened.
Yeah.
So she's sort of questioning whether or not she slept with this guy, and she's like married and has kids, has twins. So that messes her up. It messes her up really bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, what do you think about like these interactions and like the more we're learning about Cassie through these scenes?
I think it's really interesting, and it really does show how people view these kind of things, because people always say, oh, if this happened to someone, I'd be so supportive, I believe them, but when it actually happens, they're like, are you sure? What were you wearing? Why did you drink?
Yeah.
They're like, are you sure he was such a nice guy? So they don't actually believe people that say this, even though they say they will. So this movie really does show how that happens.
Yeah, totally. I thought that was especially like the victim blaming stuff, because that's super common. Unfortunately. So I think now is a good point for us to sort of transition to the spoilery portion. So just letting you know, spoilers, we're going to talk about more in-depth stuff and get really into the ending of this film. So the next thing that happens is Cassie sets up this sort of happenstance meeting with this girl, where she kind of, it's some elaborate kind of stuff. Basically has to do with like the girl thinks that Cassie is doing something with this boy band that the girl likes.
I think they're calling it Wet Dreams or something.
Yeah. That's pretty on the nose, but that's some good stuff. So while she's doing that, we see that, and then she meets up with the dean of her school, and then she's like, she kind of just drops the bomb on her and is like, something happened while I was at school with my friend Nina, and she was raped by this guy Al Monroe in front of a group of guys, and was too drunk to remember exactly what happened, but no one believed her. You didn't believe her, and you didn't do anything about it. And then the dean she's like, oh, well, I have to give him the benefit of the doubt, blah, 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 this and that. And it's just like, again, it's just another person who's like, oh, well, I can't do anything. It's just hearsay, blah, blah, blah. I couldn't. And then she even says like, oh, I couldn't ruin his life.
Yeah, I couldn't ruin his reputation. And she is played by Connie Britton, who is very well known for being the wife in Friday Night Lights. She was very sweet and very supportive. And in this movie, she plays a completely different character.
Yeah. She's again more great casting, like another great, and Alison Brie right before. It was like, and then Cassie's like, okay, well, yeah, I totally understand. Like, by the way, your daughter, I left her with those guys
at a fraternity house.
Yeah, at a fraternity. And she's like, what? And then like the dean calls her daughter's phone number, and Cassie has the phone. And she's like, oh, I'm sure she'll be fine. They're good guys, right?
Like you trusted Al Monroe, so I mean, these guys should be trustworthy.
Yeah. And then so basically the dean like capitulates, is like, okay, I'm sorry, you're right. And then she like tells her where her daughter is. Oh yeah, your daughter's at a diner waiting for a boy band to show up. You should probably go pick her up. Yeah. So again, she's figuring out all the people who, and basically we come to understand that her friend like committed suicide or something like that.
It's
because of what happened. Yeah, because like no one believed her, and it just really messed her up. And so there's a list of people, right? Al Monroe, the dean, all these people. We're going to see later in the next scene. She meets with this lawyer, who's like, I guess basically the lawyer who defended Al Monroe, and maybe some other. It's basically implied that this is what he did in his law practice, was deal with these types of accusation cases, and then he talks about digging up dirt on people and like searching through their Facebook pages and finding stuff, and then basically getting off people that do these types of sexual assaults. And then in that scene, so he like asks for forgiveness from her, the lawyer, who's played by Alfred Molina, another great choice. Very kind of manic the way that he acts too in this scene. Like it was just, there was something kind of out there about his character, I felt.
I just kept thinking, there's Doc Ock.
Yeah. He's been like, he was also in Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Yeah.
He's just like that guy.
I don't know why. I just automatically went to Doc Ock, and I'm like, there he is.
No, his Doc Ock was pretty sweet. And apparently he'll be back.
Yeah.
Maybe, or something. If the rumors are true, we'll see how many of them are true. Maybe some of them are true. So Doc Ock begs for forgiveness, and she forgives him pretty much.
Yeah.
So then we've seen that Cassie and Ryan, their relationship is kind of increasing, and by the way, we should sort of point out that he's was it like a pediatrician, right?
He was, yeah.
That's
what he did.
He's a pediatrician, so he has become a doctor, right?
And he's asking her like, why didn't you finish med school? And you could have had a really great career. And she kind of just hedges around the answer. Yeah,
she doesn't really talk about it, because the answer is like, the stuff with Nina ruined her life too, as well as what happened to Nina, where she like, died or committed suicide or whatever. Because then there's also this other scene where like Cassie is, just doing her thing, and it's another one of the guys that we saw from the first scene. And so that guy picked her up, and then Ryan sees her at the bar with this guy, and then it's this kind of awkward situation. And then again, the guy's like, wait, you're not drunk? And she's just like, no, I'm not drunk, and you're He's like this guy. He's like wearing a fedora and some shit.
Like, you're wearing a fedora. You're just wearing your fedora. Just get away.
Yeah. And then she also says like, yeah, you're not like, it's not like you can, get anyone in the daytime. Like you can only score at night. Basically, is what she says to him. And like, and he's like, because he's like, hey, you're that crazy guy that crazy chick that Jerry went out with. It's like, oh, I'm crazy. Like, no, like you wear a fedora, my friend. Yeah. But then like the two of them kind of make up, and then because like again she's like kind of easing up to him, and then she like takes him over to her house and like has dinner with her parents, and there's this whole thing. It's a cute little interaction, and so yeah, I mean we're thinking like, oh, is it possible that she can have a positive relationship finally?
Yeah.
But then we have there's a scene where so Madison is like gone crazy thinking that she slept with this guy, and so then she was like stalking Cassie and just like shows up at her house basically.
Yeah.
Like literally just like, oh my god, where are you? I need to talk to you. Because she's like, oh, like did anything happen with that guy? It was like, no, nothing happened with that guy at all. I just set you up. But then Madison admits to her that there's a tape of that thing that happened to Nina.
Mm-hmm.
And then she shows it to Cassie. And then Cassie watches it. And then we hear that Ryan was there.
Yeah.
We like hear his voice on the tape.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, oh shit. Oh shit. And it's this like kind of, again, it reconfirms her whole kind of worldview about all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then she's back to, I have to get revenge on all these people. F all of them. So yeah, what did you think about, like, so was this something that you had already kind of known before was going to happen?
I didn't know this part, no. That took me by surprise because I'm like, oh, Ryan was there? I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
Oh.
I really liked it. I wasn't super surprised because, like, to me, I felt like thematically the movie was always kind of heading in this direction with what it was trying to get at.
That, but I was just like, he seems like such a nice guy, which is probably what they're trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
Is make you think he's just such a nice guy that he couldn't do anything like that, and then it happens.
Yeah, exactly. Like that's the whole setup of this film, and I think it does it really well, right? Because like it's totally believable. You don't think like, right? They do all this stuff. He works with children. He's really nice. He's very like positive and happy. Blah blah blah. Mm-hmm. No, I mean at every level, right? The Adam Brody character, McLovin, Bo Burnham. It's always these, like they're just showing that even these types of people can do these things. Mm-hmm. So then Cassie blackmails Ryan with the video, and she's like, okay, I need you to tell me. So the guy, Al Monroe, mm-hmm. is having is getting married. He's going to have a bachelor party. And she's like, tell me where the bachelor party is going to be, and I won't release this information. And he does it. This conversation between the two of them was really interesting too, because then he like says stuff like, oh, like, how, I can't live with this over my head. And, like, are you a perfect person? Like, how can you do this? Right. And it's just like, dude, you witnessed this person getting raped. You didn't say anything about it. And that person is now dead. Like, mm-hmm. Again, like this stuff is real, right? There are people who really think that when they've been in these situations. Yeah, and it's just I think that's like just one of the things that this movie really nails really, really well. That type of mentality of how people compartmentalize and kind of how they can just do and say nothing.
Yeah.
When these things happen. Yeah. So now we get to like the crazy part of this movie.
Yeah, the part that's very divisive.
Yeah. So, and by the way, this whole thing is like the setup of how they pull this off is really kind of cheeky and smart, right? So she goes to the bachelor party. She's dressed up in this like really kind of interesting slutty nurse outfit.
Yeah. And she's got this like multicolored wig on.
Yeah, it's like red and white, and she's got these red high heels. And it's just like, wow. And so then she goes to this party. The guys are all there, and then she like feeds them all spiked liquor.
Mm-hmm.
And then she gets Al Monroe in a room, and it's just the two of them. And then the stuff that they say to each other is really funny. And she's like, okay, I need to handcuff you to the bedpost. It's like, oh, are you sure? Like, oh yeah, don't worry. Like, it's no big deal. He's like, and then he says like, oh, I'm a gentleman. I would, wouldn't do anything. And she says, you might be surprised that sometimes gentlemen are the worst.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then he's like, oh, what's your name? He's like, oh, my name's Candy. And he's like, no, what's your real name? My name's Nina Fisher. And he's like, what? Freaks him out. And he's like, you can't be Nina Fisher. And he's like, why is that? Because Nina Fisher's this person I know who's dead. And it's like, oh, maybe it's just a coincidence. And then she just like, then he's like, oh shit, I know who you are. You're Cassie. You're Nina's friend. Mm-hmm. And then she just basically springs her whole thing on him. And she's gonna carve her name into his body as revenge.
Yeah. And
so she's going to do that. And then he like gets one of his arms free, and then he basically grabs her, gets a pillow over her head, and suffocates her to death.
And then one of his friends comes in. He's like, oh, I see you banged her. And then he comes over and he's like, wait, she doesn't have a pulse. What happened, dude? What'd you do?
Yeah. Yeah. So when you actually saw that this did happen, what were your feelings about how it plays out when you actually see it?
I'd say this is part of the leak, and I was hoping it wouldn't happen. It did happen, so it was spoiled for me. So I can't say I was hugely surprised by it just because I had seen the leak, and I wish I hadn't seen it. I think it would have been a lot more impactful if I hadn't seen the leak. But still, it's a very ballsy move from the director to kill off the main character, and then just have whatever hanging in the air.
Totally, it's super ballsy. So when I initially saw this scene, I was definitely shocked, and it's shocking the way that it's shot too, because she doesn't like cut away or anything. We're there for like what feels like forever, right? Mm-hmm. It just feels like forever where we're seeing her being suffocated. And my first thought was like, oh, well, it's some kind of, I really basically thought that it was a setup where she was recording what was happening, and then she was going to basically get free some way and then show everyone, oh, this guy's a freaking murderer. And then she like died, and I was like, okay, this is definitely not exactly what I expected. I did think that there was going to be some way that she was still going to get back at them.
Which she did. She did have a contingency plan.
She did, yeah. Yeah. But certainly like seeing her get killed and get killed in that way was like you said, it's a strong choice. It's a very strong choice. And not only that, but then the next scene, like you said, the friend comes in. He's like, oh, did you bring her or whatever? It's like, no, dude, I had to kill her. And it's weird. And he says like, oh, what is this, like the 90s? It's like, oh my God. So they take her body and they burn it and bury it. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then the rest of the scenes is like the police get involved. The police meet with the parents. The police meets with Ryan, and Ryan basically lies about it. And then there's this wedding scene for Al Monroe. Blah, blah, blah. They're all getting married. Everyone's kind of happy, but a little on edge. And then Ryan gets this text from Cassie that's like, it's like a scheduled text.
Yeah, he's and it's like, you didn't think it would end this way, did you? And then like police pull up, and it's obvious that she sent a text to them Like, she had prepared a text before her death in case it happened so that he would still get caught.
Yeah. She delivers all this. So we see this package with the video delivered to the lawyer, Alfred Molina character.
Mm-hmm.
We see the cops find her body. And then we see the cops bust into the wedding, arrest Al, and we know that, you know, they're all gonna get caught up in this whole thing because they were all a part of the video.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last thing we see is text, love Cassie and Nina, winky emoticon. Wow. Okay. So what were your feelings about the way this film ends?
I thought it was really powerful. I thought it was really genius the way that they chose to end it. It did affect me on a very personal level, but I think that was a good thing. It was just, it's a movie that you have to see, like, to truly believe it and to just get the full grasp of it.
Yeah. This is definitely, like, I almost feel like this is one of the movies I'd love to have seen in a theater and not knowing anything. Right? Because, like, people, like, you're going to get a reaction. Like, but we're saying, like, when this ending, I bet you what the fight was over was people were saying, oh, she didn't die. And and someone else was like, no, she died. And then someone, no, she did not die. And then, right? And then there's a fight.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, it's really pretty shocking seeing her get killed and the way she gets killed. And, yeah, I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about the fact that she gets killed in this movie. So I guess a question I would have is, like, do you think that the thematic purpose of the film is served better by her dying in this movie?
Honestly, I can't answer that right now because I feel like I need to watch it again to fully get a grasp on it. As the film starts, you see after she meets up with Adam Brody's character, her arm is covered in blood. She's smoking a cigarette. The guys are catcalling her from the construction site, but they don't see the blood on her. So I don't know. Obviously, she's killing these guys, even though it's not ever shown. I do think she lets McLovin off because she tells him not to do it again. But it is a very, I think it's a movie that is made to prompt discussion, and it's not meant to be easy viewing or easy discussion. I think it's one that is meant to be like, did she actually do this? Is this right that she did this?
Yeah, that's a good point, for sure. Yeah, because I've definitely heard a lot of things where people, like, once they see her get killed, they kind of, that's super traumatic for them, too, seeing this person, you know, who's the protagonist, who's trying to, you know, give vigilante justice for this person. See her get killed like that is, like, really traumatic, too. But maybe that's the point, you know? Yeah, I don't know. But I think either way, it's a really good film.
It is.
Yeah. And I mean, it's certainly an unforgettable kind of experience seeing that. I mean, it's a strong choice. Yeah, I'm not sure. So yeah, do you have any other sort of thoughts about the film or anything else you really want to bring up?
Like I said before, it is triggering. It was triggering for me. So if you had something similar happen to you, be a little wary about watching this. But it is a film that provokes thought. I do recommend it if you're not going to be triggered by it, because I did have to pause the movie for a little bit. It's very powerful, and Carey Mulligan gives an amazing performance. The cast is great. Emerald Fennell has a wonderful career as a director. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot.
Yeah, for sure. It really is. It really is. But yeah, I think this is really a standout because she wrote and directed this film, and it's, you know, like, it's a really good film. And so, yeah, I'm certainly interested in what else there is to come.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, but for sure, this feels like one of those films. Like, it would be nice to like see it in a theater and then see everyone's
Yeah.
reaction. Hear the deafening silence when she's like being smothered. Like,
Which I
yeah.
know this was a little bit delayed because of everything that's going on, and then it was released on VOD a few weeks after it came out in theaters because they wanted to show it to everyone. I do think it was a good theater movie, but there's no one in theaters really to watch it. So
No, there's not. Yeah, unfortunately. I think the only place it played near me was like a drive-in.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's like barely any theaters open, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's sad, but
Yeah. So yeah, I think that just about covers it. That's our review for Promising Young Woman. Yeah, so Alyssa, do you have anything to plug or anything coming up for you?
just check out everything that's listed underneath my picture here. I'm kind of going slow right now, just trying to pick up with this new year. But if you want to see any updates, follow my Instagram or YouTube down below. And yeah, just talk to me. Let me know you saw me from here, and we'll be friends.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, check her out. Check out all my other stuff. And yeah, thanks a lot for stopping by, everybody, and take care. Peace out.